The klaxon jolted Corin Wake from a dreamless sleep, his body snapping upright in the worn pilot's chair of the Velora Drift. Sweat clung to his collar despite the chill of deep space, and for a moment, he thought he'd imagined the sound. But no, the proximity alert was still blinking furiously on the console, a soft, rhythmic pulse that meant something had breached the sensor perimeter. Computer status, Corin rasped, voice thick with sleep. Unidentified object. Metallic composition. Drifting. No propulsion signatures. Estimated mass, 3.6 metric tons. Corin blinked against the glare of the NAV display. Outside the viewport, the stars remained silent and vast, but a small, unmarked vessel spun lazily in the distance like a coin tossed into oblivion. Closer visual, he muttered. The screen magnified. What came into focus sent a chill down his spine, an escape pod. Older Alliance make, battered and barely powered. But it was the lack of a distress beacon that truly unnerved him. No active beacon. That's not right. He leaned forward, rubbing the bridge of his nose. This stretch of space, the Rift Meridian, was far from any sanctioned traffic lanes. He'd chosen it for that exact reason. It was perfect for smuggling, and even better for avoiding attention. Life signs? He asked. 3. Faint. Species unidentified. Cryostasis likely. Corin swore under his breath. Alliance regs were clear. Unauthorized contact with unknown species meant tribunal hearings or worse. But leaving them? That felt like a death sentence. And despite everything, Corin still had some lines he wouldn't cross. Engage docking tether, he ordered. Let's bring her in. As the magnetic arms of the Velora Drift extended toward the drifting pod, Corin keyed in the security override. The outer hull of the pod was scorched and scored with shrapnel marks. Alliance insignias had been half sanded off, as if someone tried to erase their origin in a hurry. Who the hell are you? He whispered. Then the hatch hissed open. Inside, bathed in cold blue light, were 3 stasis chambers. And inside those, women. Or at least, humanoid females. But Corin immediately noticed the differences: slender frames, feline features, soft fur across parts of their limbs, and ears shaped more like those of a lynx than a human. Each had unique coloration, one deep crimson, one midnight blue, and one pure white, shimmering faintly even in the dim light. Definitely not Alliance standard. He moved toward the red-furred one first. Her chamber read the most stable. As he reached for the stasis release, the comm system behind him suddenly crackled to life with a cold, official voice. Attention all vessels. Galactic Accord Enforcement Protocol Alpha 9. Be advised, 3 escaped subjects from classified biospecies program are at large. Visual identifiers, Thalari origin. Subjects are highly dangerous. Do not engage. Do not assist. Report immediately. Corin's blood ran cold. His hand hovered over the release switch. He looked back at the sleeping figures. They didn't look like monsters. They looked exhausted. Abandoned. He flipped the switch. The hiss of decompressing stasis gas filled the cramped cargo bay. Corin braced himself as the red-furred woman's chamber began to open, a gentle cascade of chilled mist spilling out like a breath held for centuries. Then movement. Her eyes snapped open, glowing gold like twin suns in a sea of rust. In an instant, before Corin could take a step back, she surged forward. Her body moved with terrifying speed, fluid and precise. One hand slammed him against the wall, claws pressing against his throat. Who are you? She demanded, her voice rough, but unmistakably feminine, layered with a low purr beneath the rasp. Corin's heart pounded. He held both hands up in surrender. I'm not with the Alliance, he said. My name's Corin Wake. I found your pod adrift. Look, I didn't even know what you were when I opened it. Her eyes narrowed. She was beautiful in a fierce, alien way, muzzle short, cheekbones sharp, crimson fur catching the low lights of the ship. Her muscles trembled with tension, but not rage. Just readiness. like a cornered panther. You heard the transmission, she said. You know what we are. I heard the part that called you dangerous, he replied, his voice steady. But I don't see danger here. I see someone who's been through hell. That gave her pause. She slowly stepped back, her breathing steadying as the tension began to bleed from her limbs. Her tail, a thick, expressive thing he hadn't even noticed at first, twitched once behind her. I'm Sarah, she said finally, her eyes never leaving his. And you've just made yourself a fugitive. Corin exhaled. Wouldn't be the first time. He turned to look at the other two stasis chambers. The blue-haired one's vitals were stable but beginning to fluctuate, her body likely reacting to Sarah's wake cycle. The third chamber, holding the white-furred Falari, remained in full hibernation. We should wake the others, Corin said. Not yet. Sarah moved between him and the pods with predatory grace. Let them sleep until I know you're not going to sell us to the highest bidder. I'm not a bounty hunter, Corin said. I run cargo. Things people don't want the Alliance to track. And last I checked, saving lives didn't have a price tag. Sarah snorted. You've been in deep space too long, human. Everything has a price. Corin didn't argue. Instead, he moved to the terminal and keyed in a series of commands. The Velora Drift's transponder signature blinked off, replaced with a spoofed ID registered to a derelict mining tug. We're ghosts now, he said. So if you're gonna kill me, do it quick. Otherwise, maybe let me finish not dying. Sarah eyed him. Then, to his surprise, she gave a short, sharp laugh. Fine, Captain Ghost. You've bought yourself a few hours. The blue-haired Falari stirred. The blue-haired Falari shifted in her stasis chamber, her breath quickening as the internal systems prepared for full revival. Mist curled from the seams as the cover slid open with a soft shunk, releasing a wave of chemical cold and dampened starlight. Corin took a cautious step back, but Sarah moved first. She was at the pod in an instant, her hand gently resting on the other woman's shoulder, murmuring something in a language that sounded like music strained through grief. The blue-furred woman opened her eyes, violet, vibrant, glowing. She blinked slowly, her gaze darting between Sarah and Corin with a mix of recognition and alarm. She's disoriented, Sarah explained, helping the other woman upright. Her name is Lissari. She's a seer. Corin frowned. Seer? Sarah nodded. She senses truths. Possibilities. Not quite visions. Not quite emotions. Something in between. Lissari tilted her head at Corin, her glowing eyes narrowing in thought. Then she spoke in a soft, bell-like tone that made his chest tighten for reasons he couldn't explain. She says your threads aren't cut. Sarah translated, her expression unreadable. That you still have choices. Corin managed a dry chuckle. Well, that's vague enough to be comforting. Lissari stepped forward, her movements more fluid than Sarah's, less predatory, more like a dancer caught in slow motion. She reached out and lightly touched Corin's shoulder, her claws retracting as though she didn't want to scare him. And just like that, he felt it. A warm, gentle pressure in his mind. A flicker of memory, his sister, long dead, laughing on a rust-covered balcony. Then it was gone, replaced by the hum of the ship and Lissari's calm stare. What was that? He asked quietly. She touched your memory, Sarah said. It's how she knows people. Not just what they say, but what they carry. Right, Corin muttered, shaken. And the third one? The white-furred woman? She's the reason we're alive, Sarah said, a shadow crossing her face. We don't wake her until we're ready. Before Corin could ask more, the ship's lights flickered. A warning chime rang from the cockpit. He dashed forward and pulled up the readings. Shit! We've got a scanner pulse. Wideband. Military grade. Sarah was behind him in seconds, scanning the data over his shoulder. That's an Alliance ping, she hissed. They're looking for us. Corin's fingers flew across the controls. If we run silent, we might pass under their sweep. If not, then we fight, Sarah growled. No. Lissari's voice cut through the tension like a razor. She pointed to a cluster of coordinates on the star map, an asteroid field riddled with abandoned mining shafts. She says we can hide there, Sarah translated, her tail twitching. But only if we move now. Corin didn't hesitate. Strap in. As the Velora drift veered toward the field, the starlight stretched and bent around them. And in that moment, Corin realized something terrifying. He was no longer in control of his life. But maybe, just maybe, he didn't want to be. The Velora drift thundered toward the asteroid field, its engines humming with tension, its hull groaning under the pressure of Corin's sharp maneuvers. The belt loomed ahead, jagged, chaotic, a graveyard of forgotten ore haulers and splintered rock. But it was exactly the kind of mess Corin knew how to disappear into. Brace for turbulence, he warned. Sarah and Lissari had already strapped into the co-pilot and auxiliary chairs. Sarah looked calm, almost hungry, like a predator gearing up for the chase. Lissari was less composed. She sat with eyes half-lidded, whispering to herself in her native tongue, a quiet chant Corin couldn't translate but felt in his bones. They're coming, she said suddenly. Faster than expected. Let them, Corin muttered. He spun the yoke and plunged the Velora drift into the belt, the ship threading needle-thin paths between tumbling rocks. On the console, scanner pulses swept behind them in rhythmic waves, growing stronger. We've got 3 vessels on our tail. Looks like Alliance gunships, he said. Standard sweep formation, Sarah said, studying the NAV grid. They'll box us in. Unless we give them something to hit, Corin finished. He opened the payload bay and dumped 3 container pods of scrap ore into space. Let's see if they like surprises. A moment later, one of the gunships clipped a tumbling pod at high speed. The explosion didn't destroy it, but the impact spun the ship off course, scattering its formation. That's one down, Sarah said with grim satisfaction. Lissari stood slowly, unbuckled, and walked to the back of the cockpit, placing her hand on the reinforced door of the 3rd stasis pod. Her voice was quiet, but insistent. She has to wake now. We need her. Corin looked back. Is she really that dangerous? She's not dangerous, Sarah said, rising beside Lissari. She's necessary. Corin hesitated, then nodded. Do it. As Lissari keyed the chamber's release, white mist hissed from the edges, and then the pod groaned open. From it rose the last of the trio. She was tall, sleek, with fur like freshly fallen snow and silver markings across her temples that pulsed faintly as she moved. Her eyes were pale, almost luminous, and her expression as unreadable as a blank page. Name's Kayla, she said before anyone could speak. How long was I under? Too long, Sarah replied. We're being hunted. Again. Kayla stepped barefoot into the center of the cockpit and looked at the navigation array. Her gaze scanned the rock formations like a machine. There, she said, pointing to a narrow canyon between 2 spinning asteroids. You can take us through. They can't. Corin raised an eyebrow. You sure? I remember every equation I've ever seen. That gap is exactly 5.3 meters wide. Our wingspan is 5.2. Corin cracked a grin despite himself. Then let's give him a show. He pushed the throttle. The Velora drift howled through the asteroid canyon like a wounded beast, its reinforced hull skimming so close to the jagged stone that sparks occasionally danced across the shielding. Corin's grip on the flight yoke turned white-knuckled. Every minor adjustment felt like threading a blade between teeth. Shields at 60%, Kayla said calmly, watching the proximity monitor as though the risk didn't even register. Corin risked a glance at her. You really just woke up, and you're already running the ship like it's yours? Someone has to, she replied flatly. And I know you almost clipped us twice. Sarah snorted. She's not wrong. Less heckling, more praying, Corin muttered. Behind them, the Alliance patrol hesitated. Only one of the remaining gunships attempted to follow them into the rift, and it didn't last long. One minor miscalculation, one asteroid's rotation slightly faster than expected, and the ship disintegrated in a brilliant flash of plasma and debris. Second ship down, Kayla observed, still unreadable. Third's breaking off. They know better. Corin exhaled hard, slumping back in his seat as the drift exited the canyon and coasted into a small clearing within the belt, an old mining outpost floating dead in the dark, long since abandoned. Its beacon had long been disabled, but the docking arms remained. "Looks like a good place to cool the core," Corin said. "We'll power down, run passive scans, and wait out any patrols." Once the drift was moored, the crew disembarked into the silent outpost. Dust and ice coated the walls, but the structure held atmosphere. Kayla ran her fingers across a broken data terminal as though searching for residual memories. "This place, it was built by miners fleeing Alliance conscription," she said quietly. "It became a safe house. For a while." "You remember all that?" Corin asked. Kayla nodded. "I don't forget things." As they set up temporary camp in the main chamber, Lissari found a working projector and activated a star chart. Dozens of red marks peppered it: Alliance watchpoints, quarantine zones, interdiction fields. "We're boxed in," Sarah muttered. "If we want out of this sector, we'll need either a miracle or a suicide route." "There is another option," Lissari said softly, brushing a lock of her blue hair from her eyes. "We stop running." Kayla turned, her gaze sharp. "You mean fight?" "No," Lissari said, looking at Corin. "I mean connect." He stared back at her, uncertain. "You touched my mind when we met," he said. "What exactly are you proposing?" Lissari stepped closer, voice low and earnest. "The Filari don't bond the way humans do. We don't pair off and grow old. Our connections are neural, deep, instinctive. And once formed, they change us." "Change how?" "We share instinct, memory, thought." She gestured between herself and Kayla. "That's why we escaped. We bonded in the camps. Became more than the sum of our parts. And you think I can bond with you?" Lissari tilted her head. "You already have. The moment you open that pod." Sarah crossed her arms. "Don't get dreamy-eyed, human. Bonding isn't romance. It's risk. It's trust, at a level that scars." Corin looked between the three of them. Something deep in his chest stirred. "I'm listening," he said. Kayla stood near the back wall of the abandoned outpost, arms folded, eyes closed, seemingly detached from the conversation. But Corin could feel her attention, like a laser focused inward, measuring, calculating. She was waiting to see what choice he'd make. Lissari stepped closer, her violet eyes impossibly deep. "It doesn't happen all at once. The bond forms like a current, first emotional, then neural. If it completes, you'll feel what we feel. See what we see. Think sometimes what we think." Corin hesitated. "And if it fails?" Sarah answered grimly. "It's like being torn in half. Both parties lose something they don't get back. That's why we don't bond with just anyone." Kayla's voice, quiet but sharp, cut through the room. "We never bonded with humans. Not once. It was assumed impossible. And yet here we are," Lissari said. "Maybe that's why it matters." Corin looked down at his hands. They'd flown stolen cargo. Fired at pursuing patrols. Saved lives. Taken risks. But never something like this. "You said it already started," he said to Lissari. "So what happens if we finish it?" She reached out slowly. "We share. Everything." Her palm touched his chest, just over his heart. The moment stretched, heavy with tension, with breath held across space and time. And then it began. It wasn't a rush. It was a shift. Corin felt the walls around his mind soften, not broken, not invaded, but opened. Welcomed. Thoughts flickered across his consciousness, not his own. The scent of rain on alien soil, the ache of starlight too long unshared, the terror of isolation in a stasis pod that might never open again. Then came his own thoughts reflected back to him, memories of drifting alone, of voices lost in static, of laughing once, long ago, when things were still simple. And at the center of it all, Lissari, wrapped in blue glow, silent and unshakable, anchoring them both. When he opened his eyes, she was smiling softly. "It's done," she said. Sarah stared at him for a long moment. "He didn't scream," she said, more to herself than anyone else. "I've had worse mornings," Corin muttered, rubbing his chest. Kayla approached now, her silver gaze unreadable. "Then we adapt. If you're part of us now, we need to move forward." "Toward what?" Corin asked. Kayla pointed at the star chart. "There's a listening post 3 jumps out. Alliance Black Site. If we can tap its core, we'll get real-time updates on their fleet movements." "You want to hack the Alliance?" he said. "That's suicide. You're bonded now," Kayla said, her tone flat. "So is everything else." Sarah cracked a rare grin. "Welcome to the deep end, Captain." And for the first time in a long time, Corin felt something stir inside him that wasn't dread. It was purpose. The Velora drift launched from the abandoned outpost in silence, drifting like space debris between the mineral husks of the asteroid field. With stealth systems online and power signatures dampened, it moved unseen through a stretch of the void known to smugglers and ghosts alike, the throat of Vexor. Corin sat in the captain's chair, hands loose on the yoke, eyes unfocused as he processed the aftershock of the bond. Lissari stood beside him, not touching, but connected in a way he couldn't explain. Her presence now hovered at the edge of his awareness, a comforting hum, like distant music he couldn't quite remember but somehow missed when it was gone. "She's stabilizing," Kayla said from the engineering station. "Your nervous system didn't reject the feedback. That's a first." Corin didn't answer immediately. He stared at his reflection in the darkened console screen. He didn't look different, but something beneath his skin felt rewired. "Why me?" he asked finally, glancing at Lissari. "Why now?" Lissari looked down, then met his gaze. "Because you didn't see us as tools. You didn't see us as cargo. You saw us." Sarah leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "Doesn't mean we trust you yet." "I didn't expect you to," Corin replied. "But I'm not walking away now." "Good," Kayla said, cutting in. "Because we're coming up on the Black Site." The Alliance listening post was a narrow needle-shaped structure embedded in a small planetoid, a husk of a moon long since hollowed out by early settlers and repurposed into a military relay. "Defense grid?" Corin asked. "Passive turrets. Automated patrols. Remote operators, probably planet-side," Kayla replied. "But the inside is wired with Guardian protocols. We trip one, and they'll know we're there in 6 systems. So don't trip any," Sarah said flatly. "We'll need a ghost code," Kayla said. "An internal Alliance clearance string. Something old buried. Preferably stolen." "I might have something," Corin muttered, rising and disappearing into the drift's cargo bay. After a few minutes of rummaging, he returned with a dusty dated ship marked with the faded crest of the Alliance fleet. "Lifted it off a derelict courier ship near Vanta Verge. Didn't have a use for it, until now." Kayla took the chip and inserted it into the terminal. Her fingers danced across the interface, her expression lit by the blue glow of decoding algorithms. "Encrypted sublayer intact," she murmured. "This will get us past the outer relay. If the rest matches, we'll have access to the entire communication archive of this quadrant." "And if it doesn't?" Sarah asked. Kayla's silver eyes gleamed. "Then we improvise." The plan was simple, in theory: sneak into the relay, copy the communication logs, and slip out without alerting the Alliance. But theory never held up against execution. And as they prepared to breach Alliance silence, Corin couldn't shake the feeling that the deeper they got, the less of his old life would remain. Docking the Velora drift to the Alliance relay was like asking a knife to politely enter a lock. Corin approached the external airlock on manual controls, nudging thruster inputs in millisecond bursts as Kayla whispered the ghost code into the system's handshake buffer. There was a long, silent pause, and then the relay's docking collar extended with a metallic clunk. They accepted the code, Kayla said. But it's decades old. We'll have maybe 15 minutes before some system flags the anomaly. Then let's not waste time, Corin replied. They suited up quickly, sleek vac suits with stealth cloth overlays and sensor dampeners. No lights, no comm chatter. Just nods and loaded stunners. Lethal rounds were a last resort. The mission wasn't sabotage, it was truth. The interior of the relay was dark, cold, sterile. The corridors were narrow, like veins cut through steel bone. Red emergency markers glowed faintly from panel edges. Everything smelled of ozone and ionized air. Vault's center core, Kayla whispered, leading the way. 2 levels down. Corin followed close, Lasari behind him, fingers brushing the wall as if sensing vibrations through the structure. Sarah took rear guard, silent and watchful. As they passed a maintenance shaft, Corin felt a sudden pressure behind his eyes, a flare of emotion that wasn't his. He turned. Lasari had stopped moving. Her violet eyes were wide, focused on a door up ahead, one that didn't match the layout Kayla had shown them. There's someone in there, she said quietly. Asleep. Not alone. Kayla's fingers froze on her datapad. This relay's unmanned. There shouldn't be anyone here. They're not Alliance, Lasari added. But they're afraid. Corin looked between them. We don't have time for detours. Then you go ahead, Lasari said. I'll be quick. Sarah moved immediately. I'm going with her. Kayla hesitated, then handed Corin a small uplink module. You've got to reach the vault within 7 minutes or the system will lock us out. Plug this into the core terminal. I'll meet you inside. The team split. Corin jogged down the corridor with Kayla, heart hammering. Not from fear, but from the unshakable sense that the relay wasn't just a military outpost. It was a secret keeper. And secrets had teeth. When they reached the vault, Kayla patched the uplink to the core. Dozens of holograms bloomed to life, encrypted transmissions, sealed orders, redacted files with layers so deep even the Alliance wouldn't be able to scrub them fast enough. Corin watched in disbelief as file after file decrypted under Kayla's fingers. Project Stratus, she said. Directive 9 Lumina. It's all here. What is it? Corin asked. Kayla looked up, her voice tight. Everything. The experiments. The breeding protocols. The reason they labeled the Filari unviable. Corin stared. It wasn't about threat. It was about fear of change. While Corin and Kayla dove into the black site's secrets, Sarah and Lasari moved like shadows through the hall. Lasari's footsteps were nearly silent, her senses fixed on the growing tug in her mind. The door she'd seen wasn't locked. That worried her more than if it had been sealed. Something about this place doesn't sit right, Sarah whispered, keeping her weapon trained low but ready. If it's Alliance, it's too quiet. If it's abandoned, it's too clean. Lasari pressed her hand against the panel. It hissed open with barely a breath of noise. The room beyond wasn't a control station. It wasn't a storage unit or data vault. It was a nursery. Cribs. Dozens. Maybe more. Each one sealed in reinforced glass. Many were empty. But some still held occupants. Small, humanoid figures. Slender. Furred. Still. Lasari froze. Her throat locked. Her mind reeled. They're Filari, Sarah whispered. Or something like us. A monitor screen blinked to life overhead. Subject batch L89 through L112 terminated due to neural degradation. Accelerated bonding protocols incompatible with hybrid cognition. Sarah stepped forward, her breath a quiet growl. They weren't just studying us. They were growing us. No, Lasari said, voice breaking. They were breeding replacements. On a far table, a stasis pod remained powered. Inside it, A young Filari, maybe 10, in human years, slept peacefully, white-furred with streaks of gold in her hair. Her chest rose and fell, monitored by a faint heartbeat signature on the adjacent terminal. "She's alive," Lissari said. "She's—" Her body staggered suddenly. A sharp jolt of panic struck her heart, not her panic. "Corin!" she gasped. Sarah caught her. "What is it?" "He's in danger." Sarah raised her calm. "Kayla, come in." Nothing. Then static, followed by Kayla's distorted voice. "We've been compromised. System flagged us. Security drones online. He's pinned down." Sarah gritted her teeth. "We go now. But we take her." She moved swiftly, opening the child's stasis pod and lifting her into her arms. The girl didn't stir, still trapped in artificial sleep, but she was warm. Alive. And not a clone. Not exactly. "She has a bond echo," Lissari whispered. "She's not empty. She was connected to someone once. Then we find out who," Sarah said. "After we get the hell out of here." The hallway ahead was no longer silent. The floor shook slightly under distant footfalls, metal, heavy, rhythmic. Alliance drones. Combat models. Not the patrol kind. As they ran, Lissari kept one hand pressed against the child's form and the other reaching out mentally, searching for Corin's presence. She felt it, faint but burning. Pinned behind metal. Bleeding. But not alone. "We have to move faster," she said. "He's not going to last much longer." Corin's breath came in ragged pulls, his back pressed against a bulkhead, the left sleeve of his vaxxit soaked in blood. A drone's blast had caught him as he yanked Kayla clear of the central terminal. The pain was manageable, for now, but the wound was deep. Kayla crouched beside him, her jaw clenched, her eyes flashing silver beneath the flickering lights of the relay core. The data transfer module was still clutched in her hand, its green indicator light blinking. "We have the intel," she growled. "But we're boxed in." Corin checked his pistol. 2 charges left. "Not much of a box if we break a wall." Kayla narrowed her eyes. "You think you can shoot your way through Alliance blast doors?" "No," Corin said. "But I know what happens when you vent a core's coolant near the emergency bulkhead." He pointed weakly toward a maintenance panel. "Rig a charge there. Small one. Enough to trigger a lockdown override." Kayla hesitated. "That could kill us. Or we wait for the drones to finish the job." She moved fast. Within moments, she'd repurposed the capacitor cell and rigged it to blow. Corin braced himself against the floor, heart thundering. Then he felt her. Lissari. Her presence flared in his mind like a flare cutting through fog. Fear. Urgency. Hope. He sent a signal back, not words, just feeling. "Still here. Bleeding. Hurry." The charge detonated with a thunderous crack, and the wall blew outward, not toward open space, but into a pressure buffer shaft. The emergency systems didn't lock them in. They let them through. "Go!" Kayla shouted, half carrying Corin as they stumbled into the shaft. Sirens wailed now, the whole station pulsing with alarm. The drones regrouped quickly. One spotted them, rotated its weapon array, and fired. The bolt never landed. A blur of crimson crashed into the corridor, claws flashing. Sarah tackled the drone mid-charge, tearing its weapon limb free and ramming it back into the drone's core with brutal efficiency. Sparks sprayed in every direction. Behind her, Lissari came running, the golden-haired Filari child cradled in her arms. Her eyes locked onto Corin's, and he felt the surge of relief, of connection, like a second heartbeat. Kayla lifted her pistol and cleared the path ahead. "We're not staying," she barked. "Next wave will be worse. Evac shafts through this access corridor," Sarah shouted. "Moves us straight to docking level." They moved together now, Kayla supporting Corin, Sarah leading with unmatched fury, Lissari shielding the child with her own body. They were bruised, bleeding, and half a second from death. But they were together. As they reached the exit hatch, Kayla stabbed the override key into the door. The hatch hissed open. And standing there was an Alliance officer. Not armored. Not armed. Just stunned. She looked at the girl in Lasari's arms. Then at the Filari. Then at Corin. And said, "I didn't know." Kayla raised her weapon. The woman raised both hands. "I'm not stopping you. Go." Corin stared at her, uncertain. "Why?" he asked. The officer's jaw trembled. "Because I had one in the labs. I saw her die. I'm not letting another one vanish." Then she stepped aside. They ran. The Velora drift detached from the Alliance relay station with thrusters roaring low and deep, throwing out ion trails in 3 different directions as Kayla activated the cloak decoy pods. From orbit, it would look like the ship had split into 3 separate vessels and scattered. It wouldn't fool them for long, but they didn't need long. Just enough. Reactor stable. Life support cycling clean, Kayla muttered as she dropped into the engineer's chair. "We're clear for now." In the infirmary bay, Lasari sat beside Corin, her palm pressed gently to his chest. He was still pale, the wound cauterized with battlefield foam and Kayla's makeshift surgery. He drifted in and out of consciousness, though never fully gone. The golden-haired girl lay in the cot beside him, still asleep, her breathing shallow but steady. A low pulse of light flickered beneath the skin of her neck, a neural implant, crude and embedded too deep for removal without trauma. "She's marked," Lasari whispered. They weren't just experimenting. They were tagging viable hybrids. "Can you undo it?" Sarah asked from across the room, arms crossed, tail twitching. "No. Not without the data from the relay. Or a neurospecialist. We should have torched the place," Sarah growled. "We got something better," Kayla said, stepping in with a small, burnt data core. "Every recorded communication, research log, and internal memo from the last 6 cycles." Sarah blinked. "That's enough to bury the Alliance." Kayla shook her head. "No. It's enough to expose them. Burying them would take more than data. We need the support of dozens of outer rim systems, sympathetic species, influential defectors. And time," Corin said, his voice dry but awake. "We're not getting that unless we move fast." Lasari helped him sit upright, one arm under his shoulder. The bond between them was steady now, a constant hum. He could feel her thoughts like echoes, worried but calm. "I saw something in that relay," Corin said. "Files tagged Stratus Echo. I think it's their next phase. Not just study, not just termination. Replication." Kayla looked grim. "They're not just afraid of us. They want to become us. But without the bond," Lasari added. "Without connection. Just control." Corin nodded slowly. "We need allies. Fast." "I know where to start," Kayla said, her voice quiet. Everyone turned to her. "There's a science outpost on Voron's Rim," she said. "Unofficial. Off-grid. Run by an ex-Alliance neurogeneticist. Name's Dr. Renevesque. She's the one who designed the first Filari suppressants. Then she vanished. Think she'll help us?" Sarah asked. Kayla's expression hardened. "If not, I'll make her." Corin glanced at the girl again, still breathing, still dreaming. "Set course," he said. "We're not done running. But now we're running towards something." Kayla turned back to the helm. And the Velora drift slipped once more into the stars. The stars blurred outside the viewport as the Velora drift streaked through hyperspace, its hull humming with the thrum of distorted gravity. The journey to Voron's Rim would take 14 hours. It felt like both too long and not enough time. In the infirmary, Corin sat beside the child's cot. The golden-haired Filari girl still hadn't woken. Her fur shimmered faintly in the sterile light, and her small body curled reflexively in her sleep. The monitor showed stable vitals, but something wasn't right. "She's resisting consciousness," Lasari said from the doorway, her tone somewhere between curiosity and concern. "Like she knows what's waiting if she wakes." Corin didn't look up. She was grown in a lab. Raised by machines. Who knows what kind of dreams she's had? Lasari stepped beside him and placed a hand on the girl's forehead. She's been touched by minds before. Maybe even bonded. She's just a kid. She's not, Lasari corrected softly. She's like us, but born into trauma. Her neural field is splintered. She's a prototype of something terrible. But she's still Falari. Still someone. Corin swallowed hard. Can we reach her? Maybe not alone, Lasari admitted. But together? Sarah entered quietly, leaned against the wall. You two are sounding a lot like Kayla. She's not wrong. Kayla called from the hallway behind them. I scanned the implant. It's a failsafe. Alliance neurobarrier to prevent emotional imprinting. But something in Corin broke through it. He turned sharply. Wait, what? Kayla crossed the room and pulled up a holodisplay. It showed a dull red neural map, the girl's. One section in the prefrontal cortex was flickering. When you linked with Lasari, your bond didn't just form between two minds. It created resonance. Subtle changes to your brainwave output. And when you touched the girl during the escape, that frequency hit her implant like a chisel on glass. Corin blinked. So, she felt it? She felt you. Kayla confirmed. And part of her recognized it as safe. Lasari placed a hand on his shoulder. It means we have a chance. If you're willing. He hesitated. Bonding once had changed him. Doing it again, even partially, felt like jumping into the heart of a supernova. But then he looked down at the girl's sleeping face. And made his choice. Tell me what to do. Lasari smiled. Together, they placed their hands gently on her, one at her temple, one over her heart. Corin closed his eyes. The bond didn't rush this time. It bled, a slow, steady unraveling of fear and steel. For a moment, he felt nothing. Then, screaming. A mind split into fragments. Memories of cold metal. Voices speaking numbers. Needles. Commands. Denial. But beneath it all, a flicker. A warmth. You're not alone anymore. The screaming faded. A light began to grow. The child stirred. Her eyes opened. Wide. Gold. Awake. She looked up at Corin, blinking slowly. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, Are you my father? Corin didn't know how to answer. But his heart did. He took her small hand. No, he said softly. But I'll be whatever you need me to be. The Velora drift emerged from hyperspace with a shudder, its starboard wing catching the turbulent edge of a gravity tide. Voron's rim filled the viewport, an eerie blue crescent of rock and storm-racked atmosphere, surrounded by a glittering debris field of shattered satellites and derelict ships. Looks like a graveyard, Sarah muttered, arms crossed at the co-pilot's console. It is, Kayla said. The Alliance abandoned this world decades ago after a failed terraforming attempt. Vesk stayed behind. Corin stood at the helm, the newly awakened Falari child seated in his lap, her golden eyes wide with wonder. She was small, barely over half his height, but curious and alert now, her earlier fears softened into cautious trust. She hasn't said much since waking, he noted quietly. But she hasn't let go of me either. She's still sorting herself, Lasari said from behind. Give her time. Kayla pinged the surface. One signal's active. Deep inside an old observatory dome. Life signs 1. Weak but stable. It's her. Corin engaged descent thrusters. Let's hope she's as ready to help as you think. As the ship descended through the upper layers of Voron's turbulent sky, lightning danced across distant peaks, illuminating ruins far older than the Alliance's brief occupation. The observatory was perched on a jagged cliffside, half covered in vines and frost. Its domed roof bore the fading symbol of the old Galactic Research Initiative, 2 intersecting rings over a flame. They disembarked into howling wind. Corin carried the child, who still hadn't spoken a second word, and the others flanked him, weapons concealed but ready. The observatory's main doors opened without resistance. The interior was warm, lit by low-running backup generators. Dust blanketed everything except a single cleared path through the main corridor. She was waiting for them at the end. Dr. Renevesk was smaller than Corin expected, tall, yes, but gaunt, her skin pale and veined with age. Her hair was snow-white, swept back in a long braid. And her eyes. They were Filari. Partially. Kayla stepped forward. You modified yourself. Vesk smiled weakly. I had to understand what they were before I could betray what we'd done. Her gaze landed on the child in Corin's arms, and her frail hands trembled. You saved her, she whispered. I thought they all. We pulled her from a black site nursery, Corin said. She was never just a test subject to them. She was Phase 1. Vesk nodded slowly. They called her Echo. Corin frowned. That's not a name. Vesk looked up. No. It's a designation. She was the first successful offspring of a forced Filari human neural synthesis. The others didn't survive. She did. And that terrified them. Sarah's voice was hard. Then help us make sure they never try again. Vesk motioned toward the back of the observatory. I have what you need. Data. Schematics. Locations of every other facility still running tests. But more importantly, I can remove that implant. Corin's arms tightened around the girl. Do it. Vesk led them into the lab. But Corin couldn't shake the feeling that something was already watching from orbit. The Alliance didn't abandon Voron's rim. They just went silent. The lab was built into the cliffside, its windows overlooking a violet storm raging across Voron's sunless horizon. Inside, the equipment was antique by Alliance standards, manual calibration dials, analog readouts, but the tech was modified beyond anything Corin had seen. Wires laced with neural gel. Sensors embedded in carved obsidian. This doesn't look like human equipment, he murmured. It's not, Vesk replied, preparing the surgical station. The original tech came from a Filari enclave during the border wars. I acquired it before the Alliance shut them down. Echo, her golden eyes now alert, wary, stood beside Corin, holding tightly to his coat. She didn't speak, but her thoughts shimmered faintly through his bond. Hesitation. Confusion. A child's instinct, twisted by unfamiliar feelings. She knows what the implant is, Lisari said softly. She just doesn't understand what it's stolen from her. She will, Corin said. When she feels what's left. Kayla checked the outer perimeter with Sarah. No signs of tracking beacons. If the Alliance tagged her, they did it with internal code. They didn't, Vesk replied without looking up. I erased every trace before I left them. But I can't promise she won't trigger something when the implant comes out. There's a failsafe, biochemical and digital. Corin frowned. What happens if it goes off? Vesk hesitated. It alerts every Stratus relay within 5 systems. And initiates cellular cascade failure. Corin's heart twisted. You mean it kills her? Vesk met his eyes. Yes. The silence that followed was absolute. Echo looked up at him, eyes wide, full of trust she didn't know how to explain. Corin turned to Lisari. Is there a way to stabilize her if it goes wrong? Can the bond help? Lisari placed a hand over Echo's heart, then her own. If we reinforce it, create a temporary trilink, me, her, and you, we might override the feedback. Just long enough for Vesk to work. Then we do it. They moved quickly. Lisari knelt before Echo, taking both of her small hands in her own. Corin knelt behind, placing one palm against her back, the other on Lisari's shoulder. Their bond flared immediately, warm, humming, tense. Echo gasped as the first ripple hit. Her body arched, but didn't resist. She's letting us in, Lisari said, eyes fluttering. Now, Vesk. The doctor worked with inhuman precision, inserting a cluster of fine, liquid-threaded needles into the base of Echo's skull. Her fingers danced along a touchboard etched with glowing symbols. Failsafe engaged, she muttered. Initiating bypass, now? Echo convulsed. A blast of pain surged through Corin's mind, not his, hers. Needles, cages, electric whispers in her bones. But Lasari held firm, her presence steady and strong. Corin grounded her with his own memories, stars, laughter, the smell of old fuel and tea, the sound of music he barely remembered. A single tone rang out from Vest's terminal. Implant neutralized, she whispered. She's free. Echo collapsed into Corin's arms, limp but breathing. Her pulse raced, but steady. No alarms. No explosions. Just silence. Then, her voice. Small. Clear. I'm not an Echo anymore, she said. Corin blinked. Then what are you? She looked up at him with new eyes. I'm Leora. And as the storm outside roared louder, something inside Corin went quiet, for the first time in years. A name. A bond. A future. But above them, in silent orbit, Alliance satellites began to wake. Leora slept now. Not the still, haunted sleep of stasis, but the natural kind. Her small body curled beneath an insulated blanket, one hand wrapped loosely around Corin's sleeve. In the dim light of the lab's recovery chamber, her breathing was steady. Peaceful. But Corin didn't feel peace. He sat beside her, elbows on his knees, staring out through the wide pane of cracked, reinforced glass. The storm outside had passed. The stars were visible again. But something about them felt wrong. Kayla entered without knocking. They're scanning, she said. Subharmonic pulses from orbit. Quiet. But frequent. How long? Started 20 minutes ago. Which means they picked up the data burst when the implant was deactivated. Corin stood slowly, his jaw tight. I thought you said we avoided the failsafe. We did, Kayla said. But maybe the Alliance didn't need the implant to signal. Maybe they were already watching. Or maybe they're watching everything. He looked back at Leora. Then we need to leave. Vesk appeared in the doorway. You should have left already. Sarah's voice echoed from the next chamber. Too late for should-haves. I just picked up a long-range ping. Capital class? Coming out of warp at the system edge. How many minutes until they can launch planetary dropships? Kayla asked. Vest didn't blink. 12. Corin turned to Kayla. We ready to fly? She nodded. Engines are hot. Drifts prepped for stealth launch. Lasari stepped into the room, her eyes drawn to Leora. She can't be moved in stasis again, not yet. The implant's removal destabilized her neural lattice. She needs a live environment. Then we'll keep her awake, Corin said. She'll stay with me. Kayla raised an eyebrow. It's not a debate. He snapped. I'm bonded to her. She's connected to me. If I leave her behind or freeze her again, she will regress. Sarah's calm crackled. Alliance drop signatures detected. I count 5 ships. Vesk pressed a data module into Kayla's hand. That contains all my research, everything the Alliance buried. Blueprints. Locations. Failed test sites. Leverage. And you? Corin asked. Vesk stepped back toward the lab's central console. I'll stay. I've modified the beacon to simulate reactor overload. They'll think I triggered a meltdown to destroy the data. Sarah frowned. They'll also assume you're dead. That's the point. No, Lasari said suddenly. We're not leaving her here. Corin turned, but Vest shook her head. You don't understand. I was the Alliance once. I built the first generation of suppressants. I oversaw test subjects. Her voice broke. I have to end this on my terms. Lasari reached out gently, placing a hand over Vesk's. We don't erase what we've done. We carry it. And we choose to do better. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Vesk closed her eyes. Then let me give you one more choice. she said. I know where the next phase is being built. They call it Sanctuary Zero. But it's a forge. For a new species. One they control. Kayla's eyes darkened. Where? Vesk handed over the last piece of data. Here. But it's not just coordinates. It's time-locked. You'll need to break the seal when you're ready. Corin looked at her, then nodded. Thank you. Vesk offered him the faintest smile. Save her. Save all of them. The team moved fast after that. Leora stirred only briefly as they rushed through the storm-torn valley back to the Velora Drift. She clung to Corin, her golden eyes glassy but aware. They're chasing. She whispered. I know, he said. But we're faster. As the drift lifted from the cliffs, Alliance vessels descended from the sky like thunder. But the stars belonged to them now. And Corin Wake had no intention of giving them back. The Velora Drift moved through the void with all lights dimmed, its engines cycling in whisper mode, leaving barely a ripple behind. Voron's rim shrank in the rear sensors, and no pursuit followed, not yet. But they all knew it was coming. Corin sat in the mess bay, a lukewarm mug of rehydrated tea untouched in his hand. Across from him sat Lasari, her expression unreadable, her fingers laced in quiet meditation. She didn't have to stay, Corin said finally. No, Lasari agreed. But she needed to. He stared into the mug. You think it makes her less guilty? I think it makes her honest, Lasari said softly. She bore the weight of what she did. Not many in the Alliance would. Footsteps padded down the corridor, light, careful. Leora peeked around the frame, her golden eyes uncertain. Corin gave her a tired smile. You can come in. She approached, clutching a blanket around her like armor. She looked healthier now, color in her cheeks, more awareness in her gaze. Still small, still quiet. But no longer a test subject. No longer a designation. Lasari slid over on the bench, offering her space. Leora didn't sit. She reached across the table and laid a small hand atop Corin's. I saw her, she said. Corin blinked. Vesk? Leora nodded. In the bond. Just for a moment, when she finished the implant removal. She gave me a memory. What kind of memory? Lasari asked gently. Leora closed her eyes. Of herself. Before she was changed. Before the Alliance. She had a brother. He died during the first Filari conflict. She never forgave herself for working on suppression tech afterward. Corin felt a sting in his chest. So everything she did was to fix that? She didn't think she deserved forgiveness, Leora said, opening her eyes. But she wanted someone else to. Sarah entered the room, still wiping sweat from her brow after routine combat drills in the lower hold. Engines are stable. We've got a clean course through the Delmath corridor. What's our heading? Kayla appeared a moment later, holding the decrypted data core in one hand, her expression tight. We have options. Vest's coordinates are time-locked by a cryptographic sequence. Not just Alliance-grade, Filari hybrid. Corin raised an eyebrow. Meaning? Meaning it's not just code, Kayla said. It's built to be unlocked by bonded minds. 3 of them. Sarah folded her arms. So us. Lasari stood, her face lighting with realization. She didn't want the information falling into just anyone's hands. Even rebels. It has to be a bonded triad. Corin stood too. Then we unlock it. Right here. Right now. Kayla placed the core on the table. It projected a glowing matrix of shifting symbols and tones. Without needing to speak, Lasari took Corin's right hand. Sarah, after a reluctant moment, took his left. And the moment they connected, the code responded. It pulsed. Shifted. Reformed. The matrix cracked open like a blooming flower. A single-star map expanded in front of them. Sanctuary 0, Sector Delta Black. Moon Rallus 3. Status, active. Controlled environment. Genetic testing phase 4. Kayla's voice was low. This isn't just another lab. This is their final stage. Corin's jaw tightened. Then we finish this before they start over. Leora looked up at him, small but certain. We're going to stop them, right? Corin knelt, brushing a stray lock of gold hair from her brow. Yeah, kid, he said. We're going to end this. And in the darkness between stars, the fire of purpose began to burn. The Velora drift coasted silently toward the edge of Sector Delta Black, a sector that didn't exist on any civilian star maps. It had no trade routes, no settlements, no broadcasts, just one classified orbital buoy and a whole lot of nothing. That's how you hit something big. Not with walls. With silence. Inside the ship, tension crackled like static. Lissari meditated near the forward viewport, legs crossed, violet eyes closed. Her mind pulsed in sync with Corin's now, gentle reminders of presence, of awareness, even when no words were exchanged. Their bond had grown over the last 2 jumps, stabilizing like a rhythm. Steady, natural. Kayla sat at the helm, compiling tactical data, feeding ship telemetry into a rotating projection of Rallus 3. 1 moon, half atmosphere. Scattered climate control nodes. No native life. 1 facility complex buried beneath polar ice. Defenses? Corin asked. Unknown. Kayla's eyes narrowed. But it's old. Old enough to have design features I recognize. Cold War-era Alliance layouts. Not military, research. No comm beacons, but lots of thermal signature masking. They want to stay hidden. Sarah leaned against the central corridor bulkhead, arms folded. Her tail flicked behind her with quiet agitation. This feels too clean, she said. Too easy. Corin nodded. It's a trap. But it's a trap we have to spring. Leora sat beside him at the table, eating from a bowl of protein mash, chewing slowly. She hadn't asked questions about Sanctuary Zero. She didn't need to. Corin could feel it, through their growing thread of connection, her fear, her certainty. I think I was meant to go there, she said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. Corin knelt beside her. What do you mean? She looked down, fidgeting with her spoon. In the nursery. Before you found me, there were other voices. Minds. I couldn't see them. But I felt one of them belonged there. Waiting for me. Lissari opened her eyes slowly. She's sensing a tether. One that was formed before we found her. Another bonded subject? Kayla asked. Or worse, Sarah muttered. A failed one. Corin exhaled and looked out the viewport. The moon they were approaching, Rallus 3, spun slowly in the void, its surface streaked with ice ridges and buried heat vents. Whatever we find there, he said, we take it apart. Brick by brick. No more tests. No more facilities. No more experiments. Sarah pushed off the wall. And if there are survivors? Then we free them. Lissari stood and joined him. Together. Kayla keyed in the final course correction. We'll arrive in 20 hours. I suggest we prepare. We might be walking into a fortress, or a grave. Corin gave a bitter smile. I've survived both. As the ship coasted into stealth orbit, the crew split off into quiet corners, checking weapons, updating survival protocols, sealing tactical gear. But even in silence, their thoughts brushed against one another. And in the calm before the fire, Corin reached out to Lissari with his mind, not to ask, not to speak, but simply to be near her. We're not alone, she whispered back. Not anymore. The Velora drift crept toward Rallus 3 under full stealth. Ion dampeners choked off its engine trails, and every hull light was blacked out. From orbit, the moon looked almost peaceful, like a sculpture of glass and snow. But beneath its frozen crust, they knew something waited. Atmospheric pressure stable, Kayla said from the console. Surface winds minimal. No active defense grid on scans. Still feels wrong. That's because it is, Sarah muttered, snapping the last clasp of her combat rig. We're not detecting defenses because the whole damn moon is the trap. Corin adjusted the straps on Leora's exosuit, designed for warmth and protection rather than combat. You're sure you want to come? He asked quietly. I don't want to, she replied. But I need to. Something is calling me. Down there. Lissari placed a gentle hand on the girl's back. We'll protect you. All of us. Kayla keyed in the landing vector. We'll come in low, behind the southern ridge. A thermal vent will mask our descent, and from there, we move on foot to the hatch buried under the ice shelf. How deep's the facility? Sarah asked, slinging her rifle over her shoulder. Deep, Kayla replied. Roughskin puts it at 37 levels. Almost 1 kilometer beneath the crust. Built to survive bombardment. Or silence. Any sign of life? Corin asked. Kayla hesitated. Nothing conclusive. Some thermal readings, but they're faint. Could be hibernation tech. Could be power bleed. Sarah cracked her knuckles. Could be corpses. The drift landed with the softest possible touch, the retro thrusters muffled against the snowpack. Outside, the world was dead quiet, no sound but the crunch of ice beneath boots and the distant groan of glacial pressure. The team stepped out together, Corin, Lissari, Sarah, Kayla, and Leora. The cold bit through their suits, but not their resolve. Leora walked between Corin and Lissari, clutching their gloved hands as she stared out over the endless blue-white landscape. There, Kayla said, pointing to a half-buried ridge of metal protruding from a snowbank like the spine of some forgotten machine. It took them 15 minutes to reach the hatch, rusted, frostbitten, but intact. Kayla connected a bypass spike and watched the indicator flicker. Still powered, she whispered. They never abandoned this place. The hatch cracked open with a hydraulic hiss, releasing a plume of pressurized mist that smelled faintly of ozone and something bitter. Old blood, maybe. Corin shone his light inside. A stairwell descended into darkness. I guess we knock, he said. Sarah grinned. Or kick the door in. Together, they stepped inside. The hatch sealed behind them with a deep, final thunk. And above, on the surface, nothing moved. The descent was steep, tight, and quiet. Metal stairs spiraled downward in a shaft lit only by emergency strips buried in the walls. They pulsed red every few meters, casting the team in a blood-warm glow that did nothing to chase the cold from their bones. Corin took point, Leora just behind him, her small steps careful but steady. Lissari stayed close to her, while Kayla and Sarah brought up the rear. No one spoke. Even through the bond, there was a tense silence, each of them pushing down instincts that screamed to turn back. At 50 meters deep, the air changed. The cold gave way to sterile warmth. The scent of metal and recycled oxygen replaced the bite of ice. Kayla held up a hand. Vault seal ahead. They stopped before a set of enormous pressure doors, sealed shut with a rotating mechanical lock. Unlike the outer hatch, these weren't rusted. They gleamed. Maintained. Waiting. Kayla knelt at the access panel and frowned. This isn't standard encryption, she said. It's hybrid. Part biological. Lissari stepped forward and placed a hand on the surface. Her breath hitched. It's a Filari code lock, she whispered. You can't open it with a key. Only a bond. Corin stepped beside her, his gloved fingers brushing hers. Their connection flared, subtle and soft, but enough. The panel glowed. The vault hissed open. Beyond, the corridor was pristine, floor polished, lights functional, walls lined with strange displays. It didn't feel abandoned. It felt waiting. They stepped inside. Kayla scanned the air. Heat signatures. Small. 4 levels below. Could be survivors, Corin said. Or bait. Sarah muttered. As they advanced, the walls came alive with projections. Faces. Blueprints. Neuro readouts. Logs of test subjects, Filari, human, and something in between. Then the audio kicked in. Project Sanctuary 0. Director, Dr. Cedric Marrow. Entry log 289. A calm male voice echoed through the corridor. Subject S13 continues to resist neural imprinting. Attempts to isolate bonding instinct have failed. Subject forms unauthorized mental links with non-selected personnel. Recommending termination. Leora flinched. Her eyes went wide. I know that voice, she whispered. Corin knelt. From where? She shook her head. From before. In the pod. From my first dreams. Kayla's face was grim. That name, Marrow, he was chief of biosynthetic experimentation. Fired years ago for ethics violations. No one's seen him since. Until now, Corin muttered. They continued through the corridor, passing sealed rooms filled with observation tanks, empty now, but stained with years-old fluids. Some had small claw marks on the glass. Lasari paused at one. Inside was a chair. Straps. Electrodes. A child-sized helmet. Sarah turned away, fists clenched. Kayla scanned deeper. The heat sources are clustered in a central chamber. Same level as the main AI core. Security? Corin asked. She nodded. Dormant. For now. He looked at the others, gaze lingering on Leora. This ends now, he said. No more pods. No more cages. They descended together, each step an echo into the dark. And somewhere below, something heard them coming. The elevator was ancient but functional, its metal cage rattling as it carried the team deeper into Sanctuary Zero. Every vibration felt amplified, like the station itself was shivering. As they descended past level 33, the air pressure changed again, warmer now, almost humid. It smelled faintly of antiseptic and old electricity. Kayla tapped her interface. Approaching level 37. Power signature just spiked. Something's awake. Door control? Corin asked. Kayla frowned. Manual only. Automated systems are isolated, by design. Lasari glanced down at Leora, who stood between her and Corin, holding their hands. Are you still sensing anything? Leora's golden eyes stared straight ahead, unblinking. He's down there. Marrow? Sarah asked. Leora shook her head. The first me. The elevator jerked to a stop. Beyond the gate stood a set of curved, bone-white doors. Clean. Unmarked. Unscarred by time. Lasari stepped forward and placed a hand on them. They opened at her touch. The chamber beyond was massive, circular, with a high domed ceiling and glowing panels of glass that pulsed like veins. In the center of the room stood a platform surrounded by 6 containment pods. 5 were dark. One still pulsed with light. Corin led them cautiously inside. Kayla, check for traps. Already scanning. No motion turrets, no automated defenses. Just surveillance, passive. They want us to see this. Sarah moved to one of the dark pods and wiped the frost from its glass. Inside lay a Falari child. Small. White-furred. Peaceful. But dead. Kayla stepped up to the only active pod. The glass was partially transparent, and within floated a body. An adolescent. Maybe 13 in human years. Not quite Leora's age, but close. Male. White gold fur. Neural ports lined the base of his neck. His eyes were open. And they were watching them. Biosigns stable, Kayla said. But brainwave activity is abnormal. He's listening. Corin stepped forward. Who are you? The chamber lights dimmed. A voice boomed from above, deep and calm. His designation is Salas. They turned as a figure stepped out from the shadows behind the glass walls. Human. Male. Older. Hair black with streaks of silver, a long coat trailing behind him. His eyes glinted with something between genius and madness. Dr. Cedric Marrow, Kayla said, her voice venomous. Marrow inclined his head slightly. In the flesh. Sarah raised her weapon. No, Corin said. Not yet. Marrow approached the platform, looking at Leora with clinical fascination. And you were never meant to survive. Yet here you are. Walking, thinking, bonding. That was your flaw, you know. You bonded with the wrong technician. One who couldn't handle the neurofeedback. It nearly killed him. Corin stepped in front of her. She's not a flaw. She's not your property. Marrow's smile never faltered. Neither is he said, gesturing to Salas. Leora stepped forward, trembling. He's like me. Better, Marrow said. He is the culmination. Perfected. Bondless. Pure. No, Lissari whispered. Not bondless. Blocked. You didn't remove the ability. You suppressed it. Marrow's expression darkened slightly. Corin advanced. You tortured children. Modified them. Lied to them. Why? Marrow looked at him with cold clarity. Because if the galaxy learns that minds can link, species can share identity, emotion, purpose, then hierarchy collapses. Borders vanish. And the Alliance loses control. Kayla hissed. So you built a new generation. Ones that wouldn't want connection. Marrow stepped back. And now you've come to destroy it. You think you're saving something. Leora stared at Salas through the glass. Can he hear me? Marrow didn't answer. But Salas blinked. Once. Then twice. And a single thought whispered into Leora's mind, not in words, but feeling. Help me. Did you hear that? Leora whispered, pressing her small hand to the glass. Corin glanced at Lissari. The bond? Lissari nodded slowly. Faint. But real. He's still capable. Then we're not leaving him here, Corin said. Marrow stepped back, his smile thinning. You're mistaken if you think sympathy will save you. He lifted a small, gleaming device from the folds of his coat, a neural activator, Corin guessed, or maybe something worse. Kayla aimed her pistol without hesitation. Step away from the console, she said coldly. Marrow chuckled. Still clinging to primitive posturing. You think I came unprepared? Not unprepared, Corin said. Just arrogant. Before Marrow could respond, Sarah moved, fast as lightning. She was on him in a blink, slamming him into the wall, claws pressed tight to his throat. How many did you kill? She hissed. How many like her? Marrow's face went red. He gasped, then smiled. Enough, to make the Alliance listen. Corin moved to Salas' pod. The boy floated motionless, eyes fixed on Leora. She reached out again, and this time, both palms pressed against the glass. I feel him, she whispered. He's scared. Can we get him out? Corin asked. Kayla dropped to one knee beside the console, typing fast. Stasis locks are hard-coded. I can override them, but there's an encryption key tied to the master protocol. Which he controls, Corin growled, nodding at Marrow. Lissari stepped in. What if we bypass the pod entirely? You mean a direct link? Kayla frowned. He's never bonded. We don't know what that'll do to him. I do, Leora said softly. He won't survive another moment alone. She looked at Corin. I want to try. Corin knelt beside her. Are you sure? He's like me, she said. And if we don't save him, we're no better than they were. He nodded. Kayla, he said. Pop the seal. I'll handle the rest. She hesitated, then slammed her hand on the console. Override in progress. Get ready. Sarah grunted, still holding Marrow by the throat. Tell me when I can break him. Marrow only smiled through bloody teeth. It's already too late. A hiss sounded. The pod began to drain. Leora stepped forward as Salas slumped forward, gasping for breath. His eyes locked onto hers, wild and unfocused. He trembled. Then Leora reached out and touched his chest. Their bond ignited like a flare. Corin staggered as the shockwave rippled through the room, emotional, mental, electric. For a heartbeat, every person present felt it. Fear. Pain. Cold. Loneliness. A life in silence. Then light. Salas collapsed into Leora's arms, sobbing against her shoulder. I thought I was broken, he whispered. You were unfinished, she said softly. Now you're not. Sarah looked at Corin. What now? Corin looked at Marrow, still pinned, still smiling. Now we burn it all down. Kayla's hands flew across the console, fingers dancing through lines of Filari hybrid code. Marrow built this place like a coffin, she muttered. Every level wired to purge if triggered. Corin stared at the man still pinned beneath Sarah's claws. And what's the trigger? Marrow's bloody smile widened. Loss of control. Sarah bared her teeth. Then it's a miracle this place hasn't imploded already. Kayla looked up. We don't have long. He primed a Nero kill switch. If I can hijack the mainframe fast enough, I can redirect the overload to the outer levels, fry the sensors, kill the logs, fake a total collapse. But we'll have to move. Fast. How fast? Corin asked. Kayla's eyes narrowed. Under 7 minutes. Corin turned to Lissari. Can you keep the kids linked? She nodded, already kneeling beside Salas and Leora. Their bond flickered gently between them, like a pulse of golden light. I can anchor them. Corin faced Sarah. You and I handle extraction. We get everyone out before this place eats itself. Sarah grinned. I thought you'd never ask. Kayla slammed her palm onto the core's activation plate. Alarm screamed. Failsafe triggered. She called. Now or never. Lissari gathered the children, Salas barely able to walk on his own. Leora supported him, stronger now. Her eyes met Corin's, and he felt her trust flow into him like warmth through a frozen hull. They ran. Corridors lit red. Steam hissed from cracked vents. Drones activated, then instantly died as Kayla's override fried their circuitry. Stairwells shook as secondary charges detonated in the sublevels, collapsing the lower labs. Marrow was left behind, screaming as Sarah tore his keycard from his jacket and hurled him into a containment cell. You made this tomb. She spat, slamming the door shut. You can rot with it. They reached the upper hatch with 90 seconds left. Kayla's voice crackled through the calm. Drifts hot. Ramps open. Let's go. The team burst onto the frozen surface just as the first of Sanctuary Zero's domes imploded, pillars of fire and ice shooting into the violet sky. The Velora Drift's landing gear steamed on contact with the snow as they scrambled aboard. Kayla sealed the hatch behind them. Corin hit the engines. The moon fell away behind them in silence. And Sanctuary Zero was no more. The Velora Drift sailed through open space, Sanctuary Zero now just a debris field of melting ice and dead metal on long-range sensors. The silence on board was heavy, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was reflection. In the infirmary, Salas lay asleep in a recovery cot, breathing steady. His body trembled occasionally, but his mind was no longer sealed away. The bond with Leora had opened him. Freed him. Corin stood by the window of the observation deck, staring out at the stars. They didn't look the same anymore. They were no longer empty. Lissari joined him quietly, brushing his shoulder with her hand. You feel it too, don't you? He nodded. Something changed. Our bond with each other, with them, it's not just personal now. It's spreading. It's echoing. Like a ripple, Corin said. Across species. Across space. Behind them, Kayla tapped into the secure broadcast array. I've loaded Vest's data. It's ready. Sarah stood nearby, arms crossed, watching the screen. This'll light a fire. Expose the entire Stratus program. Every facility. Every lab. Every name. And show them Leora and Salas. Lissari added. Living proof that connection can't be controlled. Corin exhaled. Send it. Kayla hit transmit. Across a dozen systems, rebel networks and black channels lit up. Screens flashed with test logs, neural sync patterns, and images of Falari children locked in glass. Then, Leora's face, smiling, free. A signal of hope. Not rebellion. Evolution. Hours later, the crew gathered in the commons. So what now? Sarah asked, nursing a warm mug of synth coffee. We disappear for a while, Kayla said. Let the signal spread. Let the others react. There'll be chaos. Division. But there'll also be awakening. Leora sat curled beside Corin, eyes half closed but listening. Will the Alliance chase us? They'll try, he said. But they'll never catch us. Where do we go? Salas asked from the corridor, still pale, but stronger now. What happens to us? Lasari smiled. We build. A sanctuary, Kayla said. A real one. Not hidden in ice or darkness. One where every species is welcome. Sarah raised her cup. One where no one ends up in a tank. Corin looked around at the crew, warrior, outcast, scientist, empath, and the two children who'd changed everything. He reached for Liara's hand. We find others like us, he said. We teach them to connect. To feel. To fight when they have to, but not just with weapons. With each other. Leora nodded. We make a future. The Velora drift hummed beneath their feet, engines primed. A destination unmarked. A course undefined. Not fugitives. Not rebels. Something new. And as the stars stretched out before them, endless, waiting, the crew of the drift turned toward them not as a threat, but as home.